Why do some people seem to defy gravity, soaring to the top of their fields, while others, despite years of effort, remain trapped in obscurity? Success isn't just about talent or hard work. It's about knowing when to lean in and when to walk away. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people quit at the exact moment they shouldn't and stick with things they should have abandoned long ago. Seth Godin's The Dip delivers a truth so counterintuitive it feels almost dangerous to accept. Quitting isn't failure. In fact, strategic quitting is often the only way to win. The real enemy? Wasting your best years grinding in a dead-end pursuit, mistaking stagnation for perseverance. It's a book that rips apart the comforting lie that winners never quit. The reality? Winners quit all the time, just not the way most people do. Think of every great success story you've ever heard. There was always a moment when everything seemed hopeless, when progress slowed to a crawl, when the pain of pushing forward felt unbearable. Most people assume that's a sign to stop. But what if that suffering wasn't a dead end? What if it was the price of admission to becoming extraordinary? That's the dip. It's the brutal, frustrating, soul-crushing stretch between starting something and mastering it. The part where motivation fades, obstacles pile up, and the rewards seem impossibly far away. But here's the catch. On the other side of the dip is scarcity, and scarcity creates value. Most people won't make it through. That's why those who do are the ones the world rewards. But not all struggles lead to greatness. Some roads lead nowhere, no matter how long you walk them. Some cliffs drop off suddenly when you least expect it. Knowing the difference between a challenge worth enduring and a lost cause disguised as hard work, that's what separates those who thrive from those who grind themselves into oblivion. This isn't just theory. It's the hidden pattern behind Olympic champions, billion-dollar founders, legendary artists, and industry leaders. It's also the reason millions of people, despite working relentlessly, never break through. Because they're stuck in businesses that will never scale, stuck in careers that have no future, stuck believing effort alone is the answer. So the question is, where are you right now? Are you in a dip worth pushing through, or a dead end that's bleeding you dry? Because if you don't answer that question, you're playing the game blind, and that's the fastest way to lose. Not all struggles are created equal. Some lead to mastery, wealth, and influence, others to burnout, regret, and obscurity. The problem? Most people can't tell the difference. They mistake the pain of progress for the pain of failure. They quit when things get hard, assuming difficulty is a warning sign, when in reality, it's often the price of success. Take the world of professional sports. Millions of kids play basketball, but only a handful ever make it to the NBA. Why? It's not just talent. It's the dip, the brutal grind of early mornings, relentless training, constant failure. The moment when most players, even the promising ones, realize the dream is too painful to chase. But those who push through, those who endure what others can't, they make it. Not because they never struggled, but because they understood that struggle was part of the process. This pattern repeats everywhere. In medicine, law, engineering, in business, music, filmmaking. The difference between the world-class surgeon and the med school dropout isn't just intelligence, it's who survived the dip. The difference between the best-selling author and the frustrated writer with a half-finished manuscript? One of them endured thousands of rejections, rewrites, and failures while the other walked away. The dip is why society rewards the best disproportionately more than the average. The number one company in an industry doesn't make twice as much as the number two company. It makes 10 times as much. The top YouTuber doesn't have a few more followers than the second best. They have millions more. Why? Because the marketplace values scarcity. It rewards the ones who make it through. But here's where most people get it wrong. Just because something is hard doesn't mean it's worth pushing through. Some struggles aren't signs of future success. They're warning signs of a dead end. That's why understanding where you are, whether you're in a dip worth enduring or a pit leading nowhere, isn't just helpful. It's everything. Not all struggles are worth enduring. Some will make you great, others will waste your time, drain your energy, and leave you with nothing to show for it. The real danger isn't hardship, it's choosing the wrong kind. There are 3 roads people find themselves on: the dip, the cul-de-sac, and the cliff. Each one feels like effort, Each one demands sacrifice, but only one leads somewhere worth going. The question is, do you know which one you're on? The dip is painful, frustrating, and long. It's the part where growth slows, where the work gets harder, where self-doubt creeps in. But at the end of it, scarcity, value, success. Think about the hardest skills in the world: brain surgery, elite-level chess, Olympic-level gymnastics. The reason these professionals are paid so well, respected so highly, is because almost no one makes it through the dip. The cost is too high, the training is too brutal, the patience required is too much. But for those who persist, the rewards aren't just good, they're extraordinary. The best part? It applies everywhere. Whether you're building a business, learning an instrument, or developing expertise in a field, if you can push through the dip while others give up, the game becomes unfairly stacked in your favor. The marketplace isn't interested in average, it rewards the few who make it through. But what happens when no matter how much effort you put in, nothing improves? That's not a dip, that's a cul-de-sac. You work harder, but nothing changes. You show up every day, but there's no forward motion. It's not hard, it's pointless. This is the cul-de-sac, a dead end disguised as persistence. The career that never advances, the side project that never grows, the relationship that's going nowhere. You tell yourself you just need to stick with it, but deep down, you already know the truth. This isn't leading anywhere. Here's the harsh reality. Most people spend their lives stuck in a cul-de-sac. They don't quit because quitting feels like failure. But failing isn't leaving a dead-end job. Failing is spending 40 years in it because you were afraid to walk away. There's only one correct move in a cul-de-sac. Quit. Immediately. Cut your losses. Free yourself to pursue something with real upside. Because the longer you stay, the more you sink. And that's nothing compared to the next road, the cliff. At first, everything looks great. Progress is smooth. Success feels inevitable. Then suddenly, collapse. This is the cliff. The illusion of success until it drops off completely. The job that seems stable until the company folds. The athlete who takes performance-enhancing drugs, winning in the short term but destroying their future. The business built on hype, growing fast but destined to implode. The problem with the cliff? You don't see the edge until it's too late. You feel like you're moving forward. You believe you're on the right track. But every step is taking you closer to free fall. This is where greed, ego, and blind optimism destroy people. They refuse to quit because for a while it works, but gravity is waiting. The fall is coming, and when it happens, there's no way back. The dip is brutal, but it's worth it. The cul-de-sac is slow death, and the cliff is self-destruction. Most people waste years, sometimes their whole lives, on the wrong path. But the best? They quit fast and quit often. Not out of weakness, but out of strategy. They only endure struggle when they know the reward is worth it. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Quitting isn't failure. Quitting the wrong things frees you to succeed at the right ones. Quitting has a bad reputation. We're told from childhood that quitters never win. That persistence is the key to success. That if you just push through, things will work out. But that's a lie, a dangerous one. Because persistence isn't a virtue when you're persisting in the wrong direction. Some battles aren't meant to be fought. Some roads don't lead anywhere. The real question isn't whether you should quit, it's when you should quit. The difference between winners and losers isn't just effort, it's strategy. Winners quit all the time. They just quit the wrong things so they can focus on the right ones. So how do you know when to walk away? How do you distinguish between a struggle worth enduring and one that's just draining your time, energy, and sanity? You put in the hours, you do the work, but nothing changes. No growth, no momentum. Just the same cycle, repeating endlessly. This is the most dangerous kind of failure. Not obvious failure, the kind where everything falls apart, but slow failure. The kind that doesn't feel urgent, so you tolerate it for years. Maybe even decades. You tell yourself it's just a rough patch, that things will eventually turn around. But deep down, you already know the truth. They won't. And the longer you stay, the harder it is to leave. If you're in a cul-de-sac, there is only one correct move. Quit immediately, not tomorrow, not next year, right now, because every day you waste here is a day stolen from something better. The dip is supposed to be hard. That's what makes success valuable. But here's the thing, effort should lead to results. Maybe not instantly, maybe not dramatically, but measurably. Are you seeing progress, even small wins? Or are you running on a treadmill, sweating but going nowhere? When you're in a dip worth enduring, the struggle pays off. Over time, you gain skill, momentum, and breakthroughs. But if you've been grinding for months, maybe even years, and nothing is changing, you're not in a dip, you're in quicksand. Hard work isn't supposed to be fun all the time, but it is supposed to feel meaningful. If every morning you wake up with a sinking feeling, if every task feels like a pointless burden, if you have to convince yourself that you even care, stop. This isn't just about effort. It's about alignment. Are you forcing yourself into something that doesn't fit? A job you don't believe in? A business you secretly hate? A project that no longer excites you? Struggle is necessary. Misery is not. If you're miserable and there's no clear path forward, you're on the wrong road. And the right move isn't to power through. It's to get off the road entirely. It doesn't matter how passionate you are. It doesn't matter how much effort you put in. If the world isn't responding, if there's no demand, no audience, no traction, at some point, you have to accept reality. You can love something with all your heart, but if no one else cares, you're not building a future. You're building a fantasy. There's a difference between a dip and a lost cause. A dip slows you down, but if you persist, the reward is there. A lost cause just keeps draining you, no matter how long you hold on. If the world isn't rewarding your effort, pivot. Find a different approach, a different angle, or a different pursuit entirely. Because passion alone isn't enough. The biggest reason people don't quit? Fear. Fear of wasting the time they've already invested. Fear of what people will think. Fear that if they walk away, they'll have to admit they were wrong. But here's the truth, sunk costs don't matter. What's gone is gone. The only question that matters is this the best use of your future? If the answer is no, then every second you stay is another second wasted. Let go. Quit. Not because you failed, but because you're smart enough to stop before you do. If you're in a dip, stay. Push through. The pain is temporary, and the reward is massive. If you're in a cul-de-sac, leave. Fast. Nothing will change, and you already know it. If you're on a cliff, run. Before the drop destroys everything. Quitting isn't weakness. It's intelligence. The world's most successful people aren't the ones who never quit. They're the ones who quit strategically, freeing themselves to go all in on what actually matters. The question isn't whether you'll quit something. The question is whether you'll do it before it's too late. Quitting is easy. That's why most people do it. They hit a wall, feel the resistance, and assume it's a sign to stop. They tell themselves they're making a smart decision, cutting their losses, protecting their sanity. But in reality, they're abandoning something that could have made them great. Because the dip isn't a sign to quit. It's a test, a gatekeeper, a filter designed to separate those who are merely interested from those who are truly committed. If you're in a dip worth enduring, you don't need motivation. You need a strategy. Most people fail not because the dip is too hard, but because they didn't expect it. They assumed progress would be smooth, linear, predictable. Then, when things got tough, they panicked. But if you expect the dip, it doesn't break you, it strengthens you. Think about elite military training. The instructors don't tell recruits when the hardest test is coming. They push them to exhaustion, then demand more. The ones who survive, they weren't necessarily the strongest. They were the ones who expected the suffering, who knew it was coming, and decided beforehand they wouldn't quit. The same is true for business, fitness, learning a skill, anything worth doing. If you go in thinking it'll be easy, you'll quit the moment it's not. If you go in knowing this will get brutal, and that's part of the process, you'll push through. The dip feels like failure. You put in effort, but you're not seeing results. You start doubting yourself, questioning whether this is even worth it. But feelings lie. Data doesn't. When you're in the dip, track everything. Sales, skill improvement, weight lifted, pages written, whatever it is, measure it. Even small improvements matter, because as long as you're making progress, you're still in the game. This is why elite athletes track their stats obsessively. Why successful businesses analyze numbers instead of relying on gut instinct. If they relied on feelings, they'd quit too. But they trust the data, and the data says progress is happening, even if it's slow. Motivation is a fraud. It's exciting, but it's unreliable. The moment things get hard, motivation evaporates. Discipline, on the other hand, is what gets people through the dip. The best don't wait to feel like working. They show up regardless of how they feel. This is what separates amateurs from professionals. The amateur waits for inspiration. The professional builds systems that make quitting impossible. The writer who sets a word count no matter what. The entrepreneur who commits to making 50 sales calls a day. The musician who practices even when they hate it. Discipline is what gets you through the dip. Not excitement, not motivation, but the ability to keep going when every fiber of your being wants to stop. Most people assume that to succeed, they just need to work harder. They think if they grind long enough, eventually they'll break through. But the dip isn't about working harder. It's about working smarter. Ask yourself, what's my unfair advantage? Are you naturally skilled at something your competition isn't? Do you have access to resources others don't? Can you niche down and dominate a smaller space instead of competing broadly? Trying to brute force your way through the dip is a mistake. Instead, find your leverage, because the best don't just push through. They push through strategically. Why do some people endure ridiculous amounts of suffering for years, sometimes decades, without quitting? Because they know what's on the other side. When a struggling entrepreneur fights through sleepless nights, financial losses, and self-doubt, it's not because they like pain. It's because they see the long-term vision, the business that could change their life. When an athlete wakes up at 5 a.m. for years, training in freezing temperatures, it's not because they enjoy exhaustion. It's because they've already visualized the championship, the gold medal, the record-breaking moment. The clearer your vision, the easier it is to endure the dip. Because when you know what you're fighting for, quitting isn't even an option. So, will you make it through the dip? Most people won't. They'll quit too early, or they'll push through something that isn't worth it. But if you're in the right dip and you use the right strategy, you won't just survive. You'll come out on the other side as one of the few who made it. And the world doesn't reward effort, it rewards scarcity. The question isn't whether the dip will happen, it's whether you'll push through while everyone else quits. The dip isn't just a theory. It's a pattern that plays out in every industry, every profession, every personal pursuit that requires real effort. Those who recognize it and push through end up at the top. Those who don't, they disappear. And if you think this is just about business or sports, think again. The dip is everywhere. It decides who gets the rewards and who gets left behind. The only question is, how will you use it? Starting a business is easy. Getting people to care? That's the dip. Most entrepreneurs quit too soon. They launch a product, don't see instant success, and assume they failed. But the best, they understand that the first few years are brutal by design, that the market doesn't reward effort, it rewards those who outlast the competition. Look at any billion-dollar company today, and you'll see a history of suffering. Years of barely making payroll, countless rejections, massive financial losses. But instead of quitting, they pivoted, adapted, and stuck with it. And then, the breakthrough. The ones who win in business aren't just the smartest. They're the ones who understand that the dip is supposed to be painful. That's what makes the other side so valuable. Two employees start at the same time, same company, same entry-level position. Fast forward 10 years, one of them is in a leadership role, the other is in the same position, frustrated and underpaid. Why? The difference isn't talent. It's how they handled the dip. One hit the inevitable plateau, projects got tougher, work became repetitive, the challenge increased, and they pushed through. They sought mentorship, learned new skills, and found ways to stand out. The other, they coasted. They did their job but never grew. And without growth, the dip becomes a dead end. The workplace is designed to reward those who endure discomfort and punish those who stagnate. If you're wondering why your career isn't advancing, ask yourself, am I in a dip worth pushing through? Or am I just treading water? Ask someone if they've ever tried to learn an instrument, a language, or a complex skill, and you'll hear the same story. I tried, but I wasn't good at it. The truth, they quit in the dip. The dip in skill building is predictable. At first, it's fun. You make quick progress. Then suddenly, improvement slows. It feels frustrating, even impossible. And this is where most people stop. But the ones who become great, they expect that stage. They know fluency in a language doesn't come in weeks, it comes after months of struggle. That playing the guitar isn't about talent, it's about who keeps practicing after it gets hard. No one becomes elite in a skill without suffering through the dip. The difference between a master and a beginner isn't potential, it's who didn't quit. Why do some students seem to thrive in learning while others burn out? It's not just intelligence, it's how they deal with the dip. Every subject has one. The part where things stop making sense, where concepts get harder, where grades start slipping. That's the breaking point. Some students assume they're just bad at math or not cut out for science. Others, they push through, seek help, put in extra hours. Fast forward, and the ones who endured that struggle are now the experts. Not because they were naturally gifted, but because they refused to believe struggle meant failure. Most artists quit too soon, not because they lack talent, but because they underestimate the dip. Actors, writers, filmmakers, musicians, they all face years of rejection, criticism, and financial struggle. The world is flooded with aspiring creatives who give up the moment things get hard. But the legends, they don't quit. They write another script, record another song, show up to another audition. The dip in creative fields is brutal. The industry is ruthless. The market doesn't care about your feelings, but those who push through build names that last for generations. Every success story, every industry leader, every world-class expert, they all have one thing in common. They survived the dip. The world doesn't reward participation. It rewards those who endure. So the only question left is this: are you in the right dip? And if you are, will you be one of the few who make it through?